Hey YouTube, welcome back to my channel, Taylor Talks Tales. Today I have my September TBR slash what I'm currently reading slash book haul video for you. I apologize that this is getting uploaded a bit late. Normally I like to have these videos up earlier in the month, but last part of August and beginning part of September was just crazy for me. I had a lot going on, including starting 2 new jobs. I'm going to be working as a homework helper slash tutor slash kind of educator for a family, and I'm also going to be a part-time freelance writer, which I'm really excited for because I've always wanted to make money off of my writing skills. So it's been very fun and very enjoyable with both jobs so far, but it just kept me very busy. Plus, I had my big bookshelf tour video I wanted to get up and some other stuff that I was working on. So, apologize this is getting uploaded a little late. But I have a lot of cool books to talk about. Some of them I've already read, but some of them I'm eagerly anticipating and can't wait to get to. There are 20 books that I'm going to talk about in this video. I don't think I'm going to get through all 20 this month, but I always like to be pretty ambitious and see how much I can read and kind of push myself along a little bit. And if these books overflow into October, that's okay because most of them are either horror or thriller or mystery, something like that. So I'm looking forward to a lot of these books. So let's get into talking about them. So the first book that I want to share with you is one of the books that I bought, and this is probably my most anticipated read of the month. I can't wait to get to this. I've been saving it. It's been very hard to put off, but I wanted to wait for the weather to turn a little bit, and that is Clown in a Cornfield by Adam Cesar, which, let's just appreciate this lovely cover. I really like this a lot. It's just so good. Perfect horror cover. This one I'm really looking forward to because Adam Cesar, I love his channel, love the books I've read of his so far, and this is his young adult debut, and I am looking forward to it. I tend not to be the biggest fan of young adult horror. I tend to prefer adult horror, but I think in his hands, I think he's going to do a good job. I've heard some pretty good things so far. I haven't seen a lot of reviews, but the reviews I've seen have been pretty good. So this one pretty much features this small town. There's a girl named Quinn who moves to this small town, and they're very divided sort of between young and old, and there's this history of something basically kind of like a slasher event happened where there's like a massacre, and it also, the town's logo is a clown, and pretty much this book is going to be sort of like an homage to slashers, I think, but with a unique twist to it. And there's definitely going to be a homicidal clown running around and a bunch of things happening, and I'm just looking forward to it and can't wait to read it. I'm trying to save it until the weather gets a little bit cooler where it really feels like autumn, but I don't know. I may dig into this very soon. Maybe this week, we'll have to see, but definitely looking forward to this, and you know, I think it's gonna be a great read. Next one is Violet by Scott Thomas. This is the book I am currently reading. This is by the, so Scott Thomas, he wrote Kill Creek, and I read Kill Creek earlier this year and really enjoyed it. It was a solid 5 out of 5 star read for me. Very unique, fast-paced, and I just loved how meta it could be at times, and it was a lot of fun. This book, so far, I've been reading it, I've liked it. It's different. It's, and not in a bad way. I think with Kill Creek, it's a fast-paced novel. This is more of a slow burn, and it's following a woman who, she takes her young daughter Sadie to this house that's by this lake called Lost Lake to kind of process some emotions and heal after the death of her husband and Sadie's father. And weird things start to happen in this house, which is run down, and Chris, the main character, her mother had also died as well years and years before, so she's had a lot of loss in her life, and she's just kind of trying to figure things out from there, and pretty quickly it seems like there's something going on, maybe an imaginary friend. I actually haven't gotten to that point in the book yet, but I'm kind of picking up on some things because I'm not very far in it, but so far so good, and you know, I think this is going to be probably a pretty emotional book because it has to deal with losing loved ones and, you know, being a single parent and heartbreak and all of that. So I'm hoping to get through more of this and have a review up at some point soon because I think it's going to be different from Kill Creek, but you know, writing's still very good, and I've been liking it so far. The next 3 books I'm going to share with you are part of a series, and I'm going to show you all 3 really quick, but then I'm only going to hold up the first one. So this is the Passage trilogy by Justin Cronin. So we have The Passage, The 12, and The City of Mirrors. So, funny enough, this series has been around for a very long time. I have never picked it up. I've been interested in reading these books since this one came out, which was years ago now, and part of me had wanted to get into it, but I wanted to wait until all 3 of the books were out. Then all 3 of the books were out, and I just was distracted with other things, and at this point, I still really want to read it. It sounds very good. There's also, I think, a TV series that's out right now. I haven't checked it out. 1, because I'm not a big TV show fan, and 2, I like to read the book before I see the show or the movie. This is an apocalyptic story. It has to deal with vampires and the US government doing corrupt things. So in this story, there's pretty much this very special little girl who potentially could hold the cure for this vampire plague that gets unleashed on the population after experiments go wrong in this facility run by the government. They're trying to cure basically cancer, cure everything, and extend human life. And they figure out a way to kind of extend human life at a cost, and that turns most people into vicious vampires. And I'm looking forward to it. I love any kind of apocalyptic story, and especially apocalyptic stories that either have to deal with like an outbreak, or that are horror in nature, or there's something unique to them. And for the most part, I've heard very good things about these books. I haven't heard a ton, but I've heard enough to want to give it a shot. So I'm going to see if I can binge these books. They are pretty large, so I don't know if I'll get through all 3 of them this month. We'll have to see, but they're definitely on my radar, and I think they'll be pretty enjoyable. The next book I have is Hi, Lonesome Sound by J. Wells. So I picked this one up because the cover kind of reminded me a little bit of Devil's Creek, which I read earlier this summer, so by Todd Kiesling. Really loved that book, and I think this has kind of this eerie feel to it with like the creepy steeple, and I'm just going to read the back to you because it perfectly sums it up, but I do think this is going to be similar-ish to Devil's Creek, but different enough that I'll still be able to enjoy both. In the sleepy mountain town of Moon Hollow, Virginia, there's a church with a crooked steeple. No one will say for sure how it got that way, but it's the reason the whole town gathers every decoration day to honor the dead. This year, there are 2 fresh graves up on Cemetery Hill. As strangers come to town, and the mountain song is filled with dark warnings. The good people of Moon Hollow are about to learn that some secrets are too painful to bear, and some spirits are too restless to stay buried. So, I haven't read anything by this author yet, but this sounds really awesome. Sounds totally up my alley, so can't wait to give this one a go, and, you know, if I end up enjoying it, I definitely want to give this a review on my channel, because I haven't heard anybody talk about this book. I just kind of saw it on my library page and was like, I'm going to put that on hold, and I know nothing about this book, but that's okay. Sometimes I think it can be really fun to go into a book fairly blind, so can't wait to get to this one. Next one up is The Dark Game by Jonathan Janz. Already read this one, and this one follows these 10 writers, and they're basically invited to this writer's retreat in the middle of nowhere by this kind of eccentric writer who's a bit of a recluse as well. And he's very famous, and he says that he's going to help them become better writers. Once they get there, things are pretty apparent that they aren't what they seem. Something's very wrong. Something is kind of hunting everybody down and twisting their minds, and it's, you know, almost like a little bit of And Then There Were None mixed with some other elements, but I enjoyed myself. It was a pretty fun book. Some predictable elements, but, you know, for the most part, I did like this, and I'll do a full review of it in my September wrap-up. Next one up, this is actually technically 2 novellas bound up into one book, and it is A Part in the Dark by Anya Alborn. So in this one, we have The Pretty Ones and I Call Upon Thee. So 2 novellas, and I Call Upon Thee, I feel like it's probably Anya Alborn's most well-known novella. I've seen it reviewed several different places and added a lot on Goodreads, so I know that's a pretty well-liked one. And The Pretty Ones, I'm excited for as well. So both of these stories seem to involve women and psychology and fitting in versus not fitting in. Pretty Ones, I know there's this one character who she's really struggling with trying to make friends as an adult, and she also has a very controlling older brother, and the story kind of goes from there, and I think it's supposed to take place in the 80s. Oh, actually, 1977. So, and it's during the Summer of Sam. So, and I know I Call Upon Thee deals with childhood and other things going on, and I'm looking forward to these. Anya Alborn is a pretty decent horror writer, I would say. Brother is certainly my favorite one of hers, and Within These Walls and The Devil Crept In were pretty good. There was like one other book of hers that I read that wasn't that great, but for the most part, she's been pretty enjoyable. So I'm looking forward to these, and you know, if I don't end up getting to this book, I think this will be a good choice for an October read, so we will see. Next book is a nonfiction. I actually have 2 nonfiction picks for this month. This first one is Monster, She Wrote, The Women Who Pioneered Horror and Speculative Fiction, which is written by Lisa Kroger and Melanie R. Anderson. And another cover appreciation. I think this is a really nicely put together book. So, pretty self-explanatory. This is all about famous female authors, or some lesser known female authors who wrote speculative fiction, horror fiction, sci-fi, you name it, especially, you know, people like Mary Shelley. And there's a lot more in this book, and it just is a really neatly done book. I haven't read it yet, but there's a lot of really neat illustrations in here, and it covers a lot of different authors. A lot of them I haven't even heard, so I'm kind of excited for this because this will give me probably some more books to put on my TBR, so I can't wait to get to this one. And of the 2 nonfiction books that I'm trying to read this month, this is my priority number 1. But the other nonfiction that I'm going to be hopefully reading is The Only Plane in the Sky, An Oral History of 9/11 by Garrett M. Graff, which a little bit different from some of the other books I've been sharing. This one I've heard really good things about. Like, I think every single person I know who has read this book has liked it, and not just liked it, but given it 5 out of 5 stars. And I was in 4th grade when 9/11 happened. I remember it very vividly. I wasn't really directly impacted by it, although one of my good friends in my 4th grade class, her uncle died at the Pentagon, so I just remember that day very vividly, and I'm just interested to see what this book's going to be like. And this sounds like kind of my sort of historical story that I want to read, because I was a history major and graduated with a history degree, but I don't tend to read a whole lot of historical fiction, but I do read some historical nonfiction, and I think this one sounds like it's going to be a really strong and really well done book. There are also even some pictures in here as well, and just seems really, really well researched. It's probably going to be a heavier book. There's a lot of anecdotal information, so it may be kind of a harder read, but I'm definitely looking forward to it. Next one up is Foe by Ian Reid. Earlier this year, I also read I'm Thinking of Ending Things. Loved it. Fantastic story. And, I'm interested to check out and see what the Netflix adaptation is going to be like, even though I'm kind of confused on how that's going to go necessarily, but anyway, this is another book by Ian Reid, and this one is pretty interesting sounding. There is this couple, and they live on this farm. It's set slightly in the near future, and Junior is the gentleman's name, and he ends up winning basically a lottery that he never applied for, he never participated in, and he gets sent off somewhere very far away, and his wife, who's left behind, she ends up getting almost like a replacement companion right away, so she won't have time to miss him. And then the story goes from there. I don't know too much about it because, kind of like with I'm Thinking of Ending Things, I went into that book blind. I'm wanting to do that with this book as well. I just know that it's more of a psychological thriller type of story, and if it's anything like I'm Thinking of Ending Things, then I think it's going to be a very enjoyable read. And it's also pretty short, just like I'm Thinking of Ending Things. It's, you know, not even 300 pages, so it'll probably be a very fast-paced, quick read. Next book up is The Hike by Drew Magary. And this book I've had on my TBR for a very long time. Finally getting to it. I've just heard that this book is very trippy and very surreal and bizarre and weird. Which I always like checking books like that out because sometimes it's too weird, other times it's just like right amount of weird and I'm just like, that works great. Pretty much just follows a guy who just decides one day he wants to go for a hike, and he doesn't think he's going to be gone for very long, and he's going to a place that he's hiked before, and all of a sudden he finds himself in a parallel dimension or something. He's gone someplace, and weird things are happening, and it's all about him trying to get back to his family and experiencing other stuff. So, we'll see what this is like, but, you know, I've heard some mixed reviews about this, but I always like to give books that have mixed reviews a shot because I like to be, you know, fair and make my own opinions, and, you know, I'm just curious what this is going to be like, but I've heard it's kind of a wild ride, so looking forward to it. This next one I'm really excited for, and that's The Bees by Laline Pohl. Like this cover. So, I'm super excited to read this book, partially because I really just like bees. I took several classes in college because at some point I would love to get into beekeeping. That's something I've always wanted to do, and I was actually a few years ago supposed to be an apprentice beekeeper for somebody, but it didn't quite work out for various reasons, but I just love bees. And this book is basically following bees. You follow, the main bee is Flora 717, a sanitation worker, and it's pretty much trying to take bees and their society and kind of make it almost like a reflection of our society and hierarchies and conspiracy theories and all of that. And I just think this is going to be a lot of fun and very interesting, and I'm just interested to see where this goes, because I don't really know what to expect with this book. I honestly just picked it up because it's supposed to take place from the perspective of bees, and I just thought that was really a fun and unique spin on a story, so that's why I picked this one up, but can't wait to get to it. Next one up is more of a sci-fi story, sci-fi thriller, and that is Lock In by John Scalzi. This one I've had on my TBR for a while, and I'm excited to be getting to it, and I think it's actually part of a series, but pretty much in this story there is this epidemic that turns into a pandemic where people all of a sudden get locked inside their own bodies, and it's trying to figure out what's going on, and sounds kind of like the start of a, you know, sort of your typical apocalyptic story, pandemic story, outbreak story, but this has gotten some very good reviews. Plus, the whole concept of being locked in your body really freaks me out. I remember reading Johnny Got His Gun when I was in high school. And that's one of the most disturbing books I've ever read, because the idea of being trapped in your own body and not being able to see, smell, hear, like basically do anything, you're just trapped and that's it in this dark space, really freaked me out. And I kind of think that's what this sort of lock-in disease is supposed to be like. So for me, I'm definitely interested to see if this is going to kind of freak me out the way I'm hoping it is. So in a way, I think this probably could end up being a horror story. We'll have to see. But it sounds very interesting, and I haven't read anything by John Scalzi before, but I'm interested to see where this goes, and if it's good, then I'll pick up the sequel or however many books come after this one. Next one is Abandoned by Blake Crouch. So, really like Blake Crouch, Recursion is one of my favorite books of the year. I also did enjoy Dark Matter, and Wayward Pines trilogy by him was awesome. I read that last year and really liked that whole series. So this is one of his earlier works because I haven't really checked out his earlier stories, and I know that he got his start in horror fiction, it looks like. So I picked this one up, and this one seems really interesting because it has to deal with like ghost towns and sort of the gold rush and the Wild West. So this follows a group of, I think it's like 4 journalists and writers and explorers, and they go investigate this town called Abandon, which 100 years before, in like the 1890s, the entire town just disappeared, and they don't know what happened, why everyone was gone, but they disappeared right around Christmas. And present day, it actually takes place in 2009, so it takes place in present day with some stuff going back in time, and creepy things start to happen, and I don't want to spoil my review for it, but it definitely was a very interesting story, and I can definitely, see why a lot of people like a lot of Blake Crouch's older work too, and I think he's a pretty solid horror writer. But yeah, this one was very good, and if you like mysterious disappearances, Wild West or Gold Rush time period, or people kind of traveling and experiencing something in an abandoned ghost town, this is a good pick. The next one is a novella, actually, and that is Ancients of Dreamland by Caitlin R. Kiernan. Really like Caitlin R. Kiernan. The Red Tree and The Drowning Girl were both very solid reads for me. And this one's supposed to be very Lovecraftian / some cosmic horror, it looks like. And really it's following these special agents, and they end up going to this place, if I remember correctly. Oh, yeah, so government special agent known only as the Signalman gives off a train on a stunningly hot morning in Winslow, Arizona. Later that day, he meets a woman in a diner to exchange information about an event that happened a week earlier, for which neither has an explanation, but that haunts the Signalman. And then it kind of goes from there, but I'm looking forward to it. Love cosmic horror and enjoy Caitlin Kiernan's work, so hopefully they mesh well. And I know that there's like a companion novella to this, so I'm looking forward to it. And I haven't heard too much about this, so I don't know a whole lot about this story, just the fact that I really like the cover, and I've heard some people say thought it was a pretty enjoyable read. And then there's a couple thrillers I'm about to share with you. First is The Others by C.J. Tudor. She did The Chalk Man, which I read earlier this year, and it was kind of not great, but I've heard really good things about this one, and it seems like there's sort of a revenge aspect to this story, which I'm like sold on. This book, we follow a gentleman who his 5-year-old daughter was abducted and disappeared 5 years prior, and he's been just in lots of grief and pain and trying to track her down. He actually saw her in the back of a truck, and at first he didn't quite recognize her, and then he realized by the, wait a minute, that's my daughter, but then the car disappeared, and he's felt guilty ever since, and he's been pretty much driving along the highways trying to find his daughter, and, no sign of her whatsoever, not even a body, nothing. He gets contacted by this organization called The Other People, who say, basically, we will do something for you, no matter what the cost is. And he asks them, like, will you kill someone for me? And they say yes. And it's all about them trying to figure out who took his daughter and maybe killing the person. Just sounds really cool. So it has this sort of like secret organization. Maybe it's going to be kind of like The Chain. I forgot who it was by, but it was a book that was pretty popular in the thriller portion of the bookstore for a while, and I did read that earlier this year and enjoyed it too. So we'll have to see what that's going to be like, but I feel like this is going to be pretty twisty, and I'm looking forward to it. Next one up is The Passengers by John Mars. So I read another John Mars book earlier this year as well. There's a bit of a theme to this video, I think. And I liked that book a lot. I'm totally blanking on what it is. I'll post a picture of the cover of the book that I'm talking about, but basically that was where, oh, I think it was called The One. Yeah, The One, where basically you get matched with your ideal partner, your genetically ideal partner, and that's who you're meant to be with, and that's who the one is for you. And that was a really interesting story. Thought it was very well done and had a lot of fun with it. Even if at times it was a little melodramatic, but it was fun. I enjoyed myself. This is another book of his where it has to deal with self-driving cars, and there ends up being 8 people in these cars who the cars get hijacked, and only one of them are going to make it out, and there's a wide variety of different people, including like a pregnant woman, a young person, and I think it's going to be one of those morality discussions about who you're supposed to save in this kind of situation, whose life is worth more than whose, if somebody's life is worth more than another's. And I don't know, it sounds very cool, and they're probably also going to try to figure out who's hijacking these cars, and you know, I just think it's going to be a lot of fun. This next one is The Price of Time by Tim Tigner, which I like this cover as well. So, this is also a thriller, and this one focuses on if you had all the money in the world and all the time in the world, would you be a better person or would you be a worse person? And I'll actually read the back. There's a secret in Silicon Valley, a discovery, an invention. It's one so startling and surprisingly sinister that needs to be kept secret at any price. And yeah, pretty much it's going to be there's an invention and it has to deal with time travel and other interesting elements too. Looking forward to it. I haven't really heard much about this book at all. Again, this was another book that was suggested by my library, and I just kind of clicked on it and was like, sure, I will read it. Sounds cool. And you know, I don't know if I'll get to this one this month, but we'll have to see. And then last but not least is a fantasy story, and that is Veda Nostra by Marina and Sergei Dyachenko, which pretty cool cover. This one was a subscriber recommended book, so I don't know too much about it. I'm going to read the inside flap for you really quick, but in fact, actually, I think there were 2 subscribers who said for fantasy I should give this one a shot, so I figured, you know what, I should do that. I've had some really good recommendations from you guys, so I think this is going to be a pretty good one, and I think it's a part of a series. I think it's supposed to be a part of a trilogy, and it's also translated into English from Russia. Our life is brief. While vacationing at the beach with her mother, Sasha Samokina meets the mysterious Farit Kuznetsov under the most peculiar circumstances. The teenage girl is powerless to refuse when the strange and unusual man, with an air of the sinister, directs her to perform a task with potentially scandalous consequences. He rewards her effort with a strange golden coin. As the days progress, Sasha carries out other acts for which she receives more coins from Kuznetsov. As summer ends, her domineering mentor directs her to move to a remote village and use her gold to enter the Institute of Special Technologies. Though she does not want to go to this unknown town or school, she also feels it's the only place she should be. Against her mother's wishes, Sasha leaves behind all that is familiar and begins her education. As she quickly discovers, the Institute's special technologies are unlike anything she has ever encountered. The books are impossible to read, the lessons are obscure to the point of maddening, and the work refuses memorization. Using terror and coercion to keep the students in line, the school does not punish them directly for their transgressions and failures. Instead, their families pay a terrible price. Yet despite her fear, Sasha undergoes changes that defy the dictates of matter and time, experiences which are nothing like she has ever dreamed of, and suddenly all she could ever want. And it's described as a complex blend of adventure, magic, science, and philosophy. So I think it's going to be a very fun read, and hopefully it'll be a start to a new fantasy series or fantasy trilogy that I can get into. So, looking forward to this one. So, that wraps up my September TBR / book haul / what I'm currently reading video. Thank you all so much for watching. I appreciate all of the support, and you know, if you've read any of these books, please let me know what you thought of them, if you liked them, or what are some books that you're planning on reading in September. If you have any recommendations for me, I'm always looking for good book recommendations. So anyway, Thank you so much for watching. Please like, comment, rate, subscribe, and I will talk to you guys later. Bye.